Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to ReelQuick episode 12. My name is George. I am sitting here alongside Cam and Tyler. Of course, we are missing our boy across the pond, Seth. Sometimes timing just doesn't line up, and we really wanted to get this ReelQuick episode out. ReelQuick episode 12. Yesterday, the last day of January, James Gunn finally dropped his entire slate of DCUs. Of course, my man waits till the last day of January because he's a scumbag, but we move on. Got a lot of good stuff. We're really just going to kind of run through every news. We're going to spend a little more time on the bigger stuff. So let's jump right into it. I think the first bit of news that we should discuss, which I truly think is the biggest piece of news that came out from this little news drop, is the separation of the two universes. James Gunn has confirmed that there will be a phase 1 called Gods and Monsters, alongside a DC Elseworlds. The DC Elseworlds will be encompassing the Batman, Matt Reeves' The Batman universe, Joker 2, and the upcoming Black Superman film. Tyler, I want to start with you because I know you, I think of the three of us, would have been the most happy if you saw Robert Pattinson's Batman in the DCU. So what are your thoughts on this confirmation of the separation of the two universes?
Yeah, I got to be completely honest. I've run the gambit from both sides of the spectrum. I can see the pros and cons of each. I still see so many people that are there. There's a lot of people very excited, and I can totally agree with those excitements that they're going to be completely separate. See a lot of people with very valid criticisms of saying DC Universe has been so muddy for so long. This is still going to keep it muddy by, how there's also mentioning like the Flash might be staying, Aquaman might be staying. We're losing all these other characters. Now we have the Robert Pattinson Batman being separate, and we're going to have multiple Jokers now. I truly think if James Gunn lived in a perfect world where he was God and could create his own universe from scratch, like DC's never made a movie, they would never be separate universes. He would have one full true universe. But the fact that Matt Reeves already has his vision, I think it's ultimately going to be for the best, especially since hearing how he was in that announcement video. He clearly cares so much about the creators of the stories, the writers, the directors, and people with these projects in their minds, that it would be kind of going against all that by just bringing in Pattinson and kind of co-opting what Matt Reeves already had for his plan. So I think it's for the best. I can totally understand criticisms of why it's not the best move. I can see those and agree with those to an extent. It is going to be muddy. It's going to be a little messy. People who aren't super diehard fans are going to be a little confused with how everything's going down. So, yeah, I just don't think there was really an answer that was going to satisfy everyone. But I think ultimately he had to make a strong choice, and he did.
Yeah, I also think, like, to that point of, like, making that final executive decision on keeping the two universes separate, you have to look at who James Gunn is. This man has made Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad. These are two movies, part of larger franchises, where he, as a filmmaker, had so much creative freedom. And I think he wants to respect Matt Reeves' vision and what he maybe has planned or plans on doing with the Batman universe, and he doesn't want to ruin that. Just as a creator, as an artist, I think James Gunn just respects what Matt Reeves is doing, and keeping it separate was, I guess, his way of showing that respect. Cam, I want to ask you one thing. So I'm actually stealing an HZ Joe tweet right now. Because now so shout out Joe if you're listening. So now that we have confirmation, he's not listening, but whatever. No. But now that we have confirmation that the two universes are separate, Joe tweeted, if the new Batman film releases in the next 4 years, the new Batman film being
Brave and the Bold.
Yeah, the Brave and the Bold.
Damian
will have had 5 people portray Batman on screen in 15 years. That's a different Batman every 3 years. Are we kind of getting to a point where we need to relax, and we have kind of an oversaturation of, we've had 3 Spider-Man in the last 23 years. We've had 3 Hulk in the last 23 years. And now we may as well be going on our 5th Batman.
Yeah. Now, before I answer your question, let me just say we're recording this at 12 a.m. I may not be on my game. I was asleep since 12 a.m. I was asleep since 9 p.m. I've been asleep for 3 hours, woke up for this. I might not be on my game today, people. So if I say something stupid, that's pretty normal, but
I'm gonna ask you the most difficult questions for the next hour.
That's fine. You know, that's all right. To the point of the multiple Batmans, and I'm going to talk different universes. To be honest, I think Batman and Spider-Man, I would say, are like the two cheat code superhero characters where if they pumped out a movie every half a year, I think people would still be amped to go see this. But if you pump a Hulk movie out every half year, if you oversaturate that, I think people will start getting annoyed. A Thor, an Aquaman, a Superman, even honestly, maybe I'm just not as intertwined in the comic book movie community as much, you know, to be saying Superman, but I really do think like Batman is the one character that you could give us 2 movies a year in 2 separate universes and they will both just absolutely bang. You know, it's something that like even, you know, we talk about it with Seth all the time. It's a character that he can care about also. Like I know he can care about any character, but like he doesn't love superhero movies about as much as us, or not nearly as much as me, you know. But he likes the Batman movies. The Dark Knight is his favorite comic book movie of all time. It's just a character, you know, you can get dark, you could do a lighthearted story. I've kind of seen them all, and so I think it's something that like it's kind of like the superhero cheat code to where like they could make a movie every, like I said, half year, and somehow it would not get superhero fatigue. People would still care about this character and love the story that they're doing. And this could be a complete BS statement, but I'm going to assume they have made the most like Batman comics other than Superman, other than of all DC characters. I gotta assume Batman probably has the most comics, probably has the most storylines to pull from. You know, you can always get a fresh storyline. I know there's a ton of just Batman rogues gallery that you can pull from. You can always do a different villain, things like that. I think they're setting it up to where they can do it with the Batman. And then to Tyler's point earlier, like I don't think Robert Pattinson would have ever signed on to be a part of a larger universe. I don't think Robert Pattinson wants to do, you know, 5 Batman movies, 3 team up movies, 2 cameos here. I think Robert Pattinson wants to do his trilogy and Get Out. And I think that's a big thing. Same with son of a bitch, who Joaquin Phoenix is Joker. Thank you. Like Joaquin Phoenix is not a franchise guy. He'll come back and do a sequel, I'm sure, especially for something as like challenging as the Joker to get in that role. I'm sure he loves it because that's a challenging role. You know, you got to be crazy. It's like an actual acting performance, where we've talked about it before, you know, like Chris Evans as Captain America. Yeah, it's a great performance and he's really good in that role, but you're not stretching yourself probably as much as you are the Joker. And so I think it worked out for them in that sense. And these are 2 characters that I do think you can do multiple films. And sorry to continue, but I think it worked out perfect because, like, you know, Marvel does like multiverse kind of, but I would say like that's mostly a DC thing. Like Crisis on Infinite Earths is like a huge comic book run. I was a big Arrow Flash CW fan. Like that was a really cool episode. Was there like Crisis on Infinite Earths episode? It's kind of when the show started dying a little bit, so it wasn't amazing, but like it kind of works out perfect because now they've gotten their cameo, you know, they've gotten their million universes, honestly. And they said like Superman and Lois on the CW will run for 1 or 2 more seasons. Now you can have 3 Supermen. Maybe you make one like I don't know, what's the Kingdom Come Superman, the villain Superman, you know, maybe you make one of them and then you bring in Robert Pattinson's Batman. So that's like, he's got his big cameos for his multiple universes. I think it'll work out. And rant. That's what I got for you.
I was wondering how long that was going.
Yeah,
I thought you just woke up. It's like you just read a script.
Man,
no,
I'm passionate about this shit.
No, yeah, I don't have the stats in front of me, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that, you know, Batman graphic novels have, you know, the widest range, and there's just so many, not even storylines to pull from, but there's so many variations of this character where it almost makes sense that you could have a Matt Reeves type Batman where it's just very grounded. It feels like a genuine dude working at the same time as a Justice League Batman or even like a Ben Affleck Batman where he's fully in the Justice League. He feels more like a superhero than a man, where I think Robert Pattinson's Batman feels more of like a man that you could relate to as opposed to a superhero.
And George, sorry to cut you off, but give me one second. Like I've watched a good amount, probably not nearly as many like animated Batman movies as you. And this is sad to say, but I'm gonna assume, with Kevin Conroy's passing, they're not gonna make as many of those, even if they found a perfect Batman. I don't know who is it. Is it still Kevin Conroy and Batman like Hush? Like, is he
Kevin Conroy? Like, he's the most famous animated Batman actor, but he's not. Like, you look at a full slate of the DC animated universe, he's not the only one voicing Batman.
I know. I just know he did it a lot. Like, obviously,
he's the most iconic, but like, and obviously, rest in peace to a legend. But his death is not going to stop the DC animated universe from going on.
No, I was more saying I think they're going to slow down maybe with Batman animated movies, because they have one a bunch. They have The Long Halloween, parts 1 and 2. There's another part 1 and 2 Batman that I've seen that's really good. They can just make those live action now. Like there are a ton of great storylines to do. And
well, that's also like, if you watch his video, he said that they're going to unify animated films, live action films, TV series, and gaming. But he also said that for animated, he wants to make it as often as possible the same voices as the live action roles. So maybe basically whoever's cast as the next Batman will probably be doing some animated voiceovers.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get that big of an actor because of how many projects they want them in.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's move on from Batman. But the last thing, we've been expecting like the massive like MCU Fantastic Four casting news. That's not even in my mind now. Now I'm just going to be waiting for who we're casting as Batman and Superman. Right. But anyways, moving on. Not much to talk about in terms of Aquaman, but we did get confirmation that Aquaman 3 is going to happen with Jason Momoa returning in the role. James Gunn himself saying, I said it right. James Gunn himself saying that Jason Momoa always saw Aquaman as a trilogy. Really not a lot to say here. I'm happy he's returning. I'm happy like we're continuing. We obviously lost Cavill and Affleck and Gal Gadot. But we're keeping Jason Momoa as Aquaman, and I think he's a very good casting in this role. I think I like Aquaman 1 a little better. I think I said Aquaman 3 a couple of times. I meant Aquaman 2. So any thoughts here before we move on? There's really not a lot to really talk about.
The only thing I can really say about Aquaman is I think of like Shazam, Aquaman, even Wonder Woman, even though I liked Wonder Woman more than Aquaman, I think Aquaman, out of all the movies that, like, other than the main, like Batman and Superman in the old DC universe, felt like the one the most that needed a sequel. Like, I feel like that submarine scene, like, clearly just like slapped you in the face, like, sequel coming, here's the next villain. Whereas all the other ones, even some I like better, I feel like more like if like they just ended the DC universe and said there's gonna be like Wonder Woman 1984 wasn't gonna happen, or Shazam Fury of the Gods wasn't gonna happen. I feel like Aquaman 2 like feels like something I like wanted to see based on the first one because it set up a sequel so well, and it just genuinely was like a solid film. I didn't think it was amazing. So yeah, excited to see that finish out. I like Jason Momoa, and it seems like he's actually passionate about the character, whereas so many characters that play these superhero people are just like, it's just a role for them, which like there's nothing against that, but it's cool to see someone who's very passionate about it getting more work.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy you mentioned that actually, because that is one thing that I do adore seeing. Like, you see these pictures of like Benedict Cumberbatch on the set of Doctor Strange, just reading Doctor Strange graphic novels, and obviously as someone who adores these characters and like reads them and has grown up with them, it's really awesome to see like these actors like genuinely taking care of what they're going to be portraying. And Jason Momoa, outside of Henry Cavill, I think he's the one DC guy that like genuinely adores the character he's playing. He definitely wants to take care of it. And yeah, you mentioned Aquaman 1 kind of left off. He looks at his brother. Let's talk sometimes. He's finally reunited with his mother. He's the king of Atlantis. Like, there's so much story you could pull from. And again, just like the Batman comics, there's so many different places you could have taken this story. And for a horror director and James Wan to step into an action movie, a superhero movie, like Aquaman, I think that's one of the better achievements the DCEU kind of gave us. It's not the best DCEU movie, in my opinion. I think there are a couple that are better. But just in terms of achievement, I think that's definitely right up there with something like Zack Snyder's Justice League. Cam, any thoughts on Aquaman?
I like the first Aquaman probably more than most. I like you guys said, I like Jason Momoa. This was kind of one of those where, like, unfortunately, I think Henry Cavill had to go. I think Ben Affleck had to go. Aquaman, I don't think anyone's going to be necessarily questioning. I think the biggest news, honestly, is that James Gunn basically said Jason Momoa will not be playing Lobo. That's been like the big tease. You know, Jason Momoa said he would love to play multiple characters, and James Gunn was like, yeah, no, we're not going to be having an actor playing two characters, which is the correct choice. But
dude, that started from dust. Jason Momoa says one thing about wanting to play another character, and then Twitter just did its thing and just said, yeah, Lobo, let's do it.
It's just because he looks like that, and then James Gunn had that picture of Lobo once, which, by the way, didn't mention anything about Lobo unless he's on one of these weird teams, and he had that tease a long while back. That's like the first thing he teased, and same with Mr. Terrific, just nothing from them. Yeah. So come on, James.
All right, let's move on to the last bit of kind of existing news, and this isn't really, again, we don't really need to harp on it. James Gunn has kind of doubled down on The Flash, saying, and I quote, probably one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. There was obviously early reports from early screenings that people got to see, and the praise for a superhero movie hasn't been that high since Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. Let's not get into Ezra Miller themselves. We'll talk about that another time. Let's just focus on the movie for right now. Do we believe any of this? Probably, and let me say this again. Probably one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. That is the words of James Gunn. Obviously, it's his job to gas up his universe. Do we buy this for a second?
He also what did he say? Oh, they also changed they also changed the ending again. Apparently this ending has been changed like 12 times. I don't know the actual number, but they changed it again to fit as a reboot to the entire DCU. So normally
you hear about reshoots and shit, and
exactly.
You're like, this is like gonna suck.
A movie in production hell like this, you're not expecting much. I still don't know.
I will say the Flashpoint paradox, where I'm assuming this Flash movie is headed, is one of the greatest comic book storylines out there. It's one of the Flashpoint Paradox is top 3 DC animated universe movies. So it's one of those things that, like, it has so much source material. Like, not only does it have so much just source material in general, but it has so much amazing source material that it's like, if they fry this, it's going to look extra bad. But at the same time, they could make this probably, in the words of James Gunn, one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. Tyler, do you have any thoughts on Flashpoint? Also, just, I'm going to mention a lot of graphic novels in this little ReelQuick. I recommend everyone listening, and you two, and Seth, read them. They're fucking amazing. Read them.
Read hard. Read hard.
Okay, I got quite a lot of thoughts on the Flash movie. So,
go for it.
Where to begin here? So I think the Flash will be maybe not a home run, but I don't think there's any way it's a loser of a film, because I think absolute worst case scenario, if it's just not good, people will still come away with being like, okay, it's been rebooted. Now let's get this thing rolling with the Superman movie. So I think even worst case scenario, people aren't going to come out completely sour tasted. Will it be the greatest thing ever? This seems like the two Leslie Andrea Riseborough thing all over again. But I'm optimistic, because I think James Gunn also, like, he's going to gas up his own stuff, but he's kind of putting like a lot of cards in the center here, like, or putting a lot of chips in the middle of the table here. Like, he could very easily be like, you know, like Cam's always been saying earlier when we've been talking about DC news for the past few months, like, remember guys, like, this is not his full universe yet. Like, he wasn't in part of this most of the production. So he could have very easily been like, new movies are coming out, yeah, cool, but here's the whole slate going forward, and not really been gassing it up as much. So I do genuinely believe there's some good here. But like Cam said, the end has been changed again, but I think I think the reason the ends changed so much is because the DC universe's future has always been up in the air and it's changed so many different times. So now I think it's just finally what it's going to be going forward. I did hear from Grace Randolph in a YouTube video talking about these because I think she was part of the press thing yesterday that Michael Keaton, it sounds like he's rumored to be completely removed from the movie. So I don't know if that factors into AC Joe's count. Maybe we're down to 4 Batmans in 13 years or whatever, because I think he might have been factoring in that we're going to see Michael Keaton in this. Again, these are rumors, but she said it's based on the press release yesterday. Rumors that Michael Keaton's being removed, and then she also said that we're really going to see Barry Allen's ability to go through all these different universes, so much so that there's going to be a cameo potentially, or it sounds like there's a rumored cameo from someone like way in the past. So who the hell could that be? That could be like, I mean, that'd be freaking crazy if like just real quick he's like just freaking Christian Bale's just in a Batman suit. Like,
imagine if they did like George Clooney with the Batman nipples.
God,
dude, George Clooney at the gas station with his Batman credit card, like swiping. But no, so it sounds like they might be removing Michael Keaton. But again, those are just rumors. But at least like the end of the movie's been changed to reset the universe. So to me, I really don't see any way this movie is bad. Like, I don't see there's any way I'm going to come out from this movie saying it's a bad movie. I think worst case scenario and be like, that was fine. Best case scenario, it's what they've been saying it's going to be, like, 9 out of 10 or higher.
Yeah, the Michael Keaton stuff is pretty interesting, actually, because I know they had plans after the Flash movie to bring Michael Keaton back for a Batman Beyond movie. And that was scrapped a couple months ago.
He was also going to be in Batgirl.
He was also going to be in Batgirl, which was obviously scrapped like a year ago. So I'm wondering, because I didn't even hear these rumors that he might be scrapped from the Flash entirely, but I'm assuming it's just because maybe his part in the Flash led directly into Batman Beyond or Batgirl, and now there's just no path for that, especially hearing of a million ending reshoots. They did like, we don't know where this is heading. I'm assuming it's going to be a full fresh restart, especially if you know the Flashpoint Paradox story. It just seems like the most logical way to go about the ending of this movie is just treat it as just brand new. Flash is going to do his thing. He's going to let his emotions get the best of him. He's going to go back in time to try save his mother. He's going to fuck up the timeline. Boom. Let's reset everything. I think that's most likely what's on James Gunn's mind. Any last thoughts on Flash?
So I don't know any of the comic book run that you've mentioned, Flashpoint, but do you see a way of them resetting the universe but maintaining Ezra Miller? I know we're not getting into Ezra Miller at all as a person, but I mean, like, because he reboots everything and starts fresh, but like, could there be a new Barry Allen feasibly from this like complete rebirth, or would that still be kind of like a little wonky thing they're gonna have to fit in?
So I don't know about having dual Barry Allens at the same time, but I think this is a more than beautiful time to bring in Wally West. I think the Flash has kind of been not necessarily overdone, just that obviously we've had 3 Spider-Man, 7.
I think it's been over talked about. It's never been done.
Yeah, it's never been
Other
done.
than on
But
TV.
like everyone thinks of the Flash and they think of Barry Allen. I just think this is a perfect time. And again, we're not going to get into the person, but there's a lot of controversy around Ezra Miller and what they've done. So I think this is just a perfect time to just completely erase him from the DC slate. Bring in a Wally West. I think he is, all in all, a more entertaining character. He's a more intriguing character. And if they are starting up fresh with, it seems like they're going the young direction, especially with the Brave and the Bold, bringing in Robin. Let's bring in a younger character. Let's start maybe, a young Justice League off on a good start. And the Flashpoint Paradox or the Flash movie with Barry coming back in time and maybe Wally West taking over and just go from there. But I don't know. I don't know about a dual Flash at the same time. I don't know if James Gunn is that ambitious.
I don't think he meant dual Flash. I think he just meant, like, is there a way to have the Flash movie just reset it so you recast them? But I do, James Gunn did make the comment, like, Ezra's going to get help. They're doing this, this, and this. Like, we might keep him, we might not. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Kind of. He left it up in the air, and I saw a tweet from Soups. Who honestly made a really good point of, like, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot and ruining your box office if you say, like, hey, Ezra's out. We're after this, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you're not going to make any box office. Honestly, it's not something I thought of. It was a really good point of, they're not going to just openly say, hey, these people are out. The movies that didn't lose their actors are the only movies yet to come,
And I didn't connect those dots until just now. But yeah, the only 3 we don't know the future of are the 3 movies still coming out Makes sense.
James Gunn made comments about Zachary Levi's like anti-vax comments and stuff, and he's like, well, I can't say, and he even then most studios kind of take a firm point on like things like that, and he was like, well, I can't, I'm not always going to agree with my actors. They're going to say things that I disagree with, but I can't keep changing my plans just because people say things, so it is funny that the only people we don't truly know about are the ones that have movies still to come. That's all I'll say on the Flash. To the Flashpoint point, I guess, George, the Flashpoint point. There has been nothing about the Reverse Flash in this movie. There's the Dark Flash, and we've got a lot of teases at what the Dark Flash looks like. Are they doing Dark Flash and not Reverse Flash? Because that's a major part of the Flashpoint paradox. So it's just that if they do it their own way and still make a great movie, that's awesome. But that's a bold call, I feel.
Yeah, I will say a Flashpoint movie with the absence of the Reverse Flash. I mean, it sounds doable. Like it's not like it hasn't been done, but it just sounds so odd. Like the Reverse Flash is such a massive part of Barry Allen's history, especially his history with his mom. And I'm not going to spoil anything if you guys haven't read the comics. But yeah, doing a Flashpoint movie that basically revolves around Barry Allen going back in time to stop something the Reverse Flash did, it seems a little odd.
Yeah.
We'll end the Flash talk there. Now we're going to kind of get into the new stuff that James Gunn announced. We'll start with the movies, and then we'll kind of get into the TV shows, just because I don't think we're going to be talking about the TV shows too much. We might spend a little bit more time on the movies. So we're starting off with Superman Legacy. This is set to release on July 11, 2025. And James Gunn says that this will mark the start of the DCU. So, Cam's been saying for a while, a couple projects, just because they're being released now that James Gunn is the president does not mean he was involved. So it looks like Superman Legacy will be the official start of his 100% involvement. James Gunn is writing it, and Peter Safran has come out saying it focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He is kindness in a world that thinks of kindness as old-fashioned. This sounds exactly like where Man of Steel 2 should have gone. I know I'm going to bring up the Snyderverse as much as possible, but this sounds like the perfect opportunity. Like, this would have been Man of Steel 2. If you had asked me to write 2 sentences on what Man of Steel 2 would have been, it would have been that exact same thing. Except I would have added balancing the Daily Planet or whatever the newspaper establishment that he works at. Any thoughts on this? Obviously, I think the biggest stuff coming from this is who is going to be our next Superman. The movie is over 2 years away, so there's not much we could say on the plot of the movie other than it focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. It's just a matter of who's going to be cast in this role at this point. Tyler, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about this is that just kind of the overarching DC announcements, I've seen some people say okay, not some people. There's 2 people in my comments that were like, I'm not optimistic about the DC future because they're not listening to what the fans want. And this just kind of talks into what about who's going to play Superman. Respectfully, no one wants to see your fan casts. No producer is going to look at those and care. And I just don't think they should.
I'd like to see him. I like to see him.
No, I like to see. No, I like to. I like to see them.
Delete my fan cast from my TikTok drafts now.
No, I like to see them, and I like to make them. I'm saying a producer knows what's best for what's going forward. So I think what he's doing here, I think, if you're going to reboot the DC universe, starting with Superman, I think is the way to do it. It's the way you got to go. It's what they tried to do with the Snyderverse. But I don't know. I don't really have any thoughts. I feel like we just didn't get much here. But just starting off with, it's not an origin story. We don't know who it's going to be. But 2 years and
Chris Pratt.
2 years and 4 months until 2 years, 5 months till it comes out. Yeah. Yeah, that means production's got to be starting somewhat soon. So they can only keep it hidden for so long. They're not going to be able to completely have no leaks on set. They're going to have to announce it before. Let's be honest.
That I feel like that news has to come
pretty soon.
Within the year.
I was going to say in the year, but I thought even that was going to be a little bit too far. But I want to focus on it's not an origin story thing, because a lot of people seem to be upset by that. Fantastic Four coming to the MCU is not going to be an origin story. The MCU Spider-Man Homecoming wasn't an origin story. Obviously, Matt Reeves' The Batman wasn't an origin story. I think people need to start understanding that we don't need origin stories.
You can also sorry to steal it.
No,
like,
it's fine.
You can make a origin without doing the like the Spider-Man Homecoming. Like that is like basically the start almost of like when he's learning to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But you don't have to see Uncle Ben get shot for the 5th time.
Exactly.
Like you could do an origin without
don't need the
seeing,
pearls ripped off Martha Wayne.
Yeah.
We know Superman comes from Krypton. We know Krypton's like under destruction, and that's why he's sent down to Earth. Like we get it. We've seen it. We know. Like I said, you could do an origin without doing the origin.
Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly that. Like we've seen it so many times, and I actually think the way Matt Reeves, the Batman, did it was kind of smart. He starts his story. He's not wasting.
Exactly. Yeah,
he didn't waste 20, 25 minutes giving us, oh, this is what happened to Bruce Wayne in the alley. Pearls ripped off, shot, dead, whatever. He did that very quick thing where it was a news peeling. There was a news article going on TV behind Robert Pattinson's Batman. It just basically says, in an eerie coincidence, 20 years ago, Thomas Wayne and his wife Martha were slain in his own mayoral campaign. Boom. That's it. We know. We know this happens. We know how it happens. Just move past. Don't waste 25 minutes of a movie. So I think everyone that's kind of like, I don't want to say complaining, but everyone that's kind of not on board with the lack of an origin story just needs to see that that's a huge benefit. That's a lot of time that can be saved in a movie. Both to just explore the character a little bit more, and two, just to either maybe dumb down the runtime by 25 minutes,
Yeah.
And then one last thing before we move on, unless you guys have something else. I think to the point of who we're going to cast in these roles, not only Superman, but Batman, I think we need to take the James Bond approach here and cast some unknown name. Let's make this DCU feel as fresh as possible. Like, I'd love to see Jake Gyllenhaal as Batman. Don't do that. I don't want to look at Batman and see a face I know. Like, let's start from absolute scratch. Let's do it the way James Bond does it, where, Daniel Craig steps into the role of James Bond. He's probably credited with like 2 roles prior to that. No one knew him. He was James Bond to people. He wasn't Daniel Craig. And I think they need to take that similar approach with Superman and Batman.
That being said, cast Jonathan Majors. That dude is big. That dude is already Superman. I swear to God. Cast him.
Fair.
That's all I have. Good looking man.
Thanks for
I'm excited. Also, sorry. I do want to say it's odd. I'm stealing this from my friend Eli. Shout out him.
Eli?
It's odd they have this movie with no production crew, no cast, no halfway through the script, I believe James Gunn said, coming out before the Batman 2 with, has a production, probably not all the way through a script, but like has a crew. They know who everyone's going to be playing. You would think that you could get that movie out a little quicker. I know, Matt Reeves is probably working on other things and it wasn't on the forefront of his mind, I'm sure. And so he's probably fitting it into his schedule, but still it's a little odd that they're able to get this one out before the Batman 2, part 2, I should say. So that's that
is odd.
Well, you also have to remember between like the Batman Part 2, I don't think is going to be the next bit of content we get from Matt Reeves' Batman universe. He's also developing the Penguin show and the Arkham series. So it's not like Matt Reeves is just dicking around and taking his time. But I also if he announces that the Batman 2 doesn't come out for 4 years, cool. Take your time. Take as much time as you need to make this sequel as amazing as The Dark Knight.
That's fun. That's fun with me. It's weird.
It is weird. Moving on, so Superman Legacy is going to be the start of the DCU, or the start of James Gunn being in charge of the DCU, and then following that, Superman Legacy will lead directly into the Authority. For those of you who don't know what the Authority was a storyline under Wildstorm, which was basically kind of like a sub entity of DC Comics. And then eventually these characters were rebooted into the New 52 initiative in 2010 or 2011. I always forget what year the New 52 initiative came out. They're basically anti-heroes. They're kind of like the Suicide Squad. So Weasel from the Suicide Squad, he's a member of
The
No. I'm incorrect. No, Weasel is a part of it. I'm wrong there. Don't quote me on that.
All right. Cut it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to cut it. I fucking wait.
I'm kidding.
Whatever. It's 12:30 a.m.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just about everything I know about the Authority. I haven't actually like dove into graphic novels, but
is that a film? Sorry, was that a film or a TV series?
That's a film.
All right.
I have not made any bit of a dive into the Authority, but this and the Creature Commandos, like this is James Gunn's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Characters nobody knows or gives a shit about, and he's gonna make you cry about a fucking tree that says 3 words in the entire movie. You know, this is his is his wheelhouse. This is the Suicide Squad. This is the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's gonna thrive here. I'm sure of it.
And Creature Commandos is what I was mistaken. That is the one. That is
Weasel.
The group with Weasel and Rick Flag's father. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So anything else on the Authority, or do you guys want to move on?
I don't know anything about it. I wish I did, but
I'm kind of excited that I don't. That's what I like. That's one of the most refreshing things about this slate being announced is, as much as I enjoyed the Snyderverse, every project that came out I knew about or had background knowledge on beforehand as someone who doesn't read comics. Whereas this has so much stuff that no clue what it is.
Yeah, I completely. Listen, like Cam said, James Gunn's wheelhouse. Let's take a bunch of unknown characters and make them, household names and heartthrobs. Next up, we have probably the next, largest bit of news that came out of, the new stuff, excluding Matt Reeves' The Batman, The Flash, and Aquaman. That is The Brave and the Bold. James Gunn says this will be the official introduction of the Bat family, and it is going to be the first live-action appearance of Robin since 1997, in which he appeared in Batman and Robin, not a movie that's been received well over the years. A lot of people, we're talking about who's being cast as Superman, who's being cast as Batman. A lot of people are kind of not on board with the Robin of choice being Damian Wayne. And obviously, for everyone listening, there's been multiple Robins. There's Jason Todd, there's Dick Grayson, there's Damian Wayne. So Batman goes to a couple of Robins, and James Gunn basically says Damian Wayne is his favorite of the Robins. He describes him as a little son of a bitch, an assassin, and a murderer. And for everyone listening, Damian is Bruce's biological son. And that is unknown to Bruce for the first 8 to 10 years of Damian's life. So their relationship isn't like a typical father-son relationship. It's very broken. And obviously now you're including the fact that you found your father and he turns out to be Batman. Sick. Like that'd be so dope. Can you imagine?
I wish.
But that's about all the information we have on the Brave and the Bold. Personally, I'm very excited to see live action Robin. I couldn't really care less which version they picked. If anyone here watches Titans, rest in peace. HBO Max just canceled that shit. But if anyone watches Titans, we see 2 versions of Robin in that show, Jason Todd and Dick Grayson. So I'm pretty happy that we're going to be seeing a new version, Damian Wayne. Cam, any thoughts on this?
I can't find the tweets, but just to your Titans point real quick, the guy who plays Jason Todd in Titans tweeted like 3 or 4 times at James Gunn and was like, man, we should make a Jason Todd movie. Hey guys, what about Jason Todd? Anyone see? And I was dying because I'm like, bro wants it so bad, which like I get it, man. I would love to, if I were in this universe and I like could get weasel my way in, like I get it. That's awesome.
Good try. I will say one thing.
Yeah.
I know we just canceled Titans and Doom Patrol, and I know Titans gets a bad rap for its bad writing, but I genuinely love the casting of Titans. And if I found out that, I don't know his name, but if that kid that plays Jason Todd or
something, I couldn't find it.
Or even the older Robin that plays Dick Grayson, if I found out that they're going to be cast in DCU, I'm very happy. I'm genuinely happy. Give him the writing of a James Gunn or whoever's going to end up writing the Brave and the Bold. And then I think they'll thrive. I think they're in a situation where it's like, and no shade to the MCU, but I think it's like a Tatiana Maslany a situation where I think she's amazing as She-Hulk. I think she's a really good casting, but unfortunately the writing of that show just sucks. And I think that's kind of the same thing that Titans falls into, just not as sucky writing.
No, that's fair. Just to the actual point of the Brave and the Bold Batman movie, one of the big things, you know, we mentioned fatigue of Batman earlier, and like I don't necessarily think he'll get fatigued per se, but one of the big things that we kind of have never gotten into in the live action shows are the Bat family. Like you mentioned, you know, Batman and Robin was definitely a picture that came out at one point. But other than that, we haven't really, you know, we get the little Robin tease with Joseph Gordon-Levitt at the end of The Dark Knight Rises. You know, we got the ha ha ha, Robin's dead in Batman v Superman. You know, you get small teases here and there, but like one of the big things that we haven't really dove into is the Bat family. Like you mentioned, all of the Robins, you know, maybe a Batgirl. There's plenty of others. There's a fucking show about Pennyworth right now. I don't even know if that's definitely not surviving, but there is a show about Pennyworth, and it's like Batman's butler, or the origin of Batman's butler, which by the way, stupid ass title, but doesn't matter. You know, there's so many characters to dive into, and like we mentioned, man, you don't always have to make, you know, you can do a Wally West, you can do a Robin movie, you know, they're the same fucking thing. They're fast, or they're a bat, like a creature of the night. Like they're this Nightwing is the same goddamn thing as Batman. And I know there's like always small intricate details, like how I'll just use Miles Morales versus Spider-Man as you know, he can go invisible, but it's the same thing. You don't always have to use Peter Parker. You can go to a Miles Morales. You don't always have to use Barry Allen. You can go to a Wally West. You know, you can do an older Batman and then just have a Robin movie, and you can make it the same fucking thing. It's a Batman movie. You know, it's not that difficult, but I know it's a bitch for fans to wrap their head around. But it's the same thing. I can't stress that enough. You could use different characters. That's all I have. We don't have a whole lot on this.
No, that's where a lot of respect for the MCU comes in, because you got to think about where Iron Man was in 2008. He was not a household name. No one fucking knew who Iron Man was, and everyone's question at the time was like, why would they not start with a Captain America? Why would they not start with a Spider-Man? Why are they starting with this relatively unknown name and shit? And I think that's a risk that I don't know if James Gunn necessarily wants to take, considering the state of the DCU. And like, you know,
I mean, that's fair,
because he is picking it up in a pretty shitty spot. So I don't know if he wants added risk of, you know, starting his DC universe with, you know, a Swamp Thing show or a Robin show.
Yeah. And I get that. I totally do. He's in both a good position and a shitty position, in the sense that, like, yeah, you might be battling superhero fatigue, or not even more like in depth than that. You might be battling just, say, Batman fatigue or Superman fatigue, because you've gotten a million movies and they're not that good. Actually, Man of Steel is really good. I do like Man of Steel. You won't catch me saying I don't, but like Superman 3 sucks. No one really remembers it, but like the Superman movies with Brandon Routh kind of suck. No one really remembers them, but you know, they're still there. There are a lot of movies if you go back far enough. So you got a little bit of fatigue there.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler, anything you want to say before we wrap up the Brave and the Bold conversation?
The only thing is the announcement of Robin joining this, being Batman's biological son, at least 10 years old. Kind of throws an interesting flavor into what we're, because I mean, everyone's like, oh, this reboot of the universe is going to be a lot younger characters. We're starting with kind of like them in their younger state so that they can grow into these roles, and in the Justice League movies, and they're kind of in for, you know, the 10-15 year long haul. But realistically here, we're talking about a 30-year-old Batman at the minimum, right? Like if you're going to have a 10-year-old biological son, roughly speaking, around 30 years old is probably going to be what he's going to be. So I think for me, it's just like, I guess that's probably right around where I was expecting, but maybe they could go like 25, 26-year-old Batman to start and just do like a young Bruce Wayne and move it in from there. But realistically, I think we're going to be seeing like a 30 to 30, like in terms of actor age, probably 30 to 35 years old is what they're going to be looking for. Whereas maybe in my mind, I thought maybe they go a little younger. That's really the only thing I took away from this, is that Batman might look a little older in the DC universe than I expected, especially since we're not going to see it till 2025 or 2026. So, yeah.
I mean, Robert Pattinson isn't 25, 26. You know, he's probably in his 30s. I don't know his exact age, but he is like a year. It was a year 2 Batman in the Batman. So I don't know if they want to do the same storyline. So I think basically everyone except Batman is going to be a younger rebooted model, you know, kind of. But I see what you're saying. I just don't think they would do two of the exact same timelined Batmans.
Yeah, which I guess makes sense given, especially like where the Justice League goes. And obviously, I'm not as well versed in comics, but Batman's always kind of the ringleader of them all, and
yeah,
him being the more experienced older one. Whereas if we have a younger Flash, younger Superman, younger Green Lantern, that could be more. That's probably more the direction they end up going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, we'll wrap up the Brave and the Bold there. So let's move on. We've covered Superman. We've covered Batman. Supergirl. That's kind of the next in line. And at this point, I don't know if this really goes chronologically. I know Superman Legacy and the Authority will be 1 and 2 in the DCU. Not entirely sure if the Brave and the Bold will come next, followed by Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. But Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is the next big movie that we got confirmation on, and that's going to be based off of a comic book run that ran not too long ago from 2021 to 2022 of the same name, Woman of Tomorrow. Supergirl in this comic book line being excuse me.
Yeah, right.
Jesus. That was like a weird sneeze, half cough. But this will be Superman's cousin, Kara Zor-El, and James Gunn has been explaining her. Basically, is a very different type of Supergirl. James Gunn says, we see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he was an infant, versus Supergirl, who was raised on a rock chip off of Krypton, and watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life. I expect this to be, and I don't want to say, I mean, this is what I expect. I expect this to be one of the darker entries into James Gunn's DC universe, especially with the way he's describing her as much more hardcore. Maybe not darker, but I expect this to be more violent. And I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to see, the boys' hero-gasm type stuff, but I think, and just from the way it sounds, from how James Gunn kind of presented this movie, you kind of want to distinguish the difference between Supergirl and Superman. Mm-hmm. They were very much raised differently. One of them is fighting on Earth for hope and peace and prosperity. The other one is essentially heartless.
Fighting to survive at that point.
She's fighting to survive. She's very, I guess, Gore the God Butcher-esque, where she's kind of a product of the environment she grew up in, and that's not going to play too well. So I expect this movie to end up being kind of Superman trying to tame her. But what are your thoughts?
You think Superman will be in it? I haven't read the comics. I know it's based off a run that, like you said, came out last year. I didn't read that. Hell, I didn't even know there was a comic run going on then. I just, but I didn't expect Superman to be in it maybe more than anything other than like a cameo. Maybe he will be. But we'll see. Who knows? No one knows anything at this point. I would say a big thing, and we'll talk this more, maybe the next movie that we're going to talk about, Swamp Thing, is I think the benefit James Gunn has right now to distinguish the DCU from the MCU is, like he said, he wants to combine animation, game, movie, TV, and make them all connected. Like MCU's trying to do TV, and they do a little bit of animation with What If, and then they're going to do Marvel Zombies, whatever. But I think James Gunn wants to do it all, encompassing all the same actors. Going to connect it all. And I think the other big thing that they have to distinguish themselves is James Gunn's not afraid to do an R-rated movie. He can do a kids movie. He can do a horror movie. He can do a PG-13 comedy. I think they will hit every genre and every age range, and I think that's the biggest thing. When the MCU says, hey, Moon Knight is going to be a darker movie or show, you kind of know it's not going to be. You're kind of like, it might be like more punches, but you're not going to get someone cutting someone's throat or something. But the MCU says, hey, we're going to make a horror movie here. We're going to make Supergirl really intense and really aggressive because she's been raised like this. I believe them a lot more than I believe, Moon Knight being dark. So that's a good thing they have going for them.
Yeah, I also believe that because we've seen James Gunn be able to handle both sides of it, where he makes something like the Suicide Squad, which is incredibly violent, like you're seeing shit. You're seeing people's head get shot off. One of the first shots is Pete Davidson's front of his head just being blown off. But then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, he can make a Guardians of the Galaxy, which, doesn't really get as violent, doesn't really get as gory, as graphic, but he's still able to make a very coherent and well-received movie. So, yeah, like you said, when we hear, and we'll talk about it next, when James Gunn announces that Swamp Thing is going to be more of a horror movie, and then maybe we have something like The Brave and the Bold, which even though it's a Batman movie, it's going to be about Robin. Maybe that'll be a little bit more kid-friendly. I believe James Gunn in like this vision that he kind of has and distinguishing between horror and maybe like a science fiction thriller or something like that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And for Supergirl, like the way that just the brief, we got like a couple sentences to describe each of these projects, but just from what we've been hearing, it kind of, again, I don't want to compare it directly to Marvel, but it sounds a lot like, the state of Wanda right now. Whereas I'm hoping, we're getting this character is so tortured in her mind. She's just only destruction because everything's been taken from her. Someone like Superman comes in, tries to make her more rational, but she's just like, dude, you don't get it. Like, I don't give a fuck right now. Like, everything's gone from me. Like, I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to, like, take out all my frustrations on the world. Going to be dark. If you can get just, like, I feel like if that's cast really well, that it can be just, like, a killer movie. Like, one of the best of the slate coming up.
Yeah, that's definitely... I don't know, in like a weird way, like we got a Batman movie, a Superman movie, Flash, Aquaman. Supergirl is right up there with like one of the things I'm just very excited for, just because of what type of tone it seems like they're going for. And speaking of tones, we'll just jump right into the final announced movie, and that is Swamp Thing. I made a little rundown for myself, and for every other TV show and movie, I have like a nice little paragraph blurb. The only thing I have written down under Swamp Thing is all caps horror ? But I guess that goes back to our previous conversation where I don't even think I need a question mark because I believe it. James Gunn says he's going to make a Swamp Thing horror movie. I believe it. Yeah, is it going to be full blown like Insidious horror? Probably not. But I believe that there's going to be some scarier elements that we've seen in any other comic book movie.
Yeah, I mean, like we said with Creature Commandos and the Authority, they're making characters that are unknown, that team up, that people don't care about, but making people care about them. That's right up James Gunn's alley. He's done it before. We have some stuff in one of the TV series I think we'll talk about in a bit is going to be pure comedy, they're saying. Right up James Gunn's alley with the type of tone he's had. I mean, sure, they're brutal, but Peacemaker, Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy, layered with tons of nuanced comedy. Swamp Thing, on the other hand, they are co-CEOs after all. Right up Peter Safran's alley is a horror movie. Yep. So not only Supergirl, because I mean, Peter Safran and James Gunn are directing all these movies, but they're going to have their influence and their hands on every single one here. So the fact that we're going to be seeing comedy and horror, it's just like, that's just the beautiful thing about these two being the co-CEOs because they have such a diverse background. And I think this is really where you're going to see Peter Safran just flex his muscles in something like a Swamp Thing movie where he's going to be heavily involved in. I mean, they're trying to get James Gunn to direct the Superman movie. Like, maybe they get Peter Safran to direct this. Who knows?
Yeah, that's one of the things where, like, I wouldn't be mad. Like, it's you want to bring in different directors, you want to bring in different filmmakers just to get different perspectives on each film. This is one of those situations where, like, if James Gunn wants to direct Superman, Supergirl, The Brave and the Bold, cool. If you want to give Peter Safran Supergirl, sorry, I meant to say it for Peter Safran, and Swamp Thing, go for it. I'm perfectly fine with them just because of their history as filmmakers and as storytellers. It kind of leads me to believe that they're more than capable of taking on multiple projects of varying tones and genres.
Yeah, I think a big thing you mentioned, Tyler, is how Peter Safran's there too. You know, James Gunn is the like
ringleader.
Yeah, he's the one everyone knows. He is the one that everyone talks about because he's in front of the camera, and I think it's just kind of who he is. He's always on Twitter, you know. It's who he is. He wants to be in front of the screen. I will also say, like, Peter Safran was a producer on Aquaman, who was obviously directed by James Wan, who's done, if I'm not mistaken, Insidious and The Conjurings. Saw, yeah. I didn't have
Fast Five,
Fast Five,
or Furious 7. One of the two.
Okay. I
Always
will.
forget.
I don't know, but either way, those are two of the good ones. So honestly, so we'll take it. It's Furious 7, but yeah, he did. He did the Conjurings, Insidiouses, a couple of those. So like, and Aquaman, I think he did a good job, but you could bring him back for a Swamp Thing movie where he's able to handle this character and he's able to do his horror. Like he was supposed to do what the Creatures of the Abyss or whatever they are, from Aquaman, and that's kind of like a horrifying scene because these are horrifying creatures. It's not horror, but he was supposed to make a horror movie or show with those creatures, and so honestly, I would just give him the reins to this Swamp Thing. And then, like we said, Peter Safran produce it. And obviously James Gunn and Peter Safran will be a producer on everything, but Peter Safran will have his hand in a little bit more. Just give him the reins. And like, I think he can make a competent movie with characters you care about, but he's really good at horror. So that's like, kind of his wheelhouse. And I know they have a good relationship, but Swamp Thing's a character just no one really knows about, even though it's had a TV show, it's had a movie, and it's a character that's really sad and alone, honestly. Like it's a fucking Swamp Thing. No one wants to hang out with this dude. Bad vibes from the swamp. And so there's a lot of ways they could go about it. I think they always try to do horror, and I'd like to see them do it well this time. That being said, I've never seen the movie or the TV series, but I've just heard they're bad. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I also want to touch on one thing you said that doesn't really have to do with Swamp Thing, but a lot of people forget that James Gunn and Peter Safran have a history together. This isn't like the first time they've ever worked together. So they know how to like kind of work in unison and kind of feed off of one another, which also just makes me very happy. It's not like they brought in James Gunn and then just hired some rando to just work alongside him just so that he didn't have complete control. They brought someone in that he has full experience with. So we'll wrap up the movie talk there. Just a quick recap: Batman Part 2, October 3rd, 2025. Aquaman 2, most likely going to be a trilogy happening with Jason Momoa. The Flash, probably one of the greatest superhero movies ever made, in the words of James Gunn. And then starting the official DCU, we have Superman Legacy, The Authority, The Brave and the Bold, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and Swamp Thing. We're kind of pushing like an hour on ReelQuick, and we still got some television shows to go through. So let's run through a couple of these.
Will be quick.
Yeah, I can't imagine we spent too much time on television. First one being Creature Commandos. I believe this is going to be one of the animated projects coming from James Gunn and Peter Safran. I don't know a lot about Creature Commandos, if I'm being honest, so I just kind of have this snippet from a Variety article I read. So if you guys don't mind.
Go crazy.
The Commando characters were first launched in 1980. The premise features Frankenstein's monster teaming up with a werewolf, a vampire, a gorgon to fight Nazis in World War II. Weasel from the Suicide Squad is a member of the Creature Commandos, as well as Rick Flag's father, Rick Flag Sr. James Gunn, I have one quote. Animation, Gunn says, allows their creative collaborators to tell stories that are gigantic without spending, $50 million on an episode. And like Tyler mentioned earlier, James Gunn has also said that the actors that are most likely going to be cast in the live action will most likely voice eventual DC animated stuff. Any thoughts on this? I'm pretty excited to see, like Cam said, we're getting a lot from James Gunn. We're getting TV shows, we're getting movies, we're getting video games, the DC animated universe. It really seems like he wants a lot to just kind of work in conjunction. And I'm pretty excited for that. It seems like a crazy roller coaster to jump on, but I'm excited. This seems like a ridiculous plot, a ridiculous cluster of characters. So toss it in live action, make it cool looking, and let's see what you can do.
Yeah, I think people could argue that fighting Nazi storylines played out in superheroes in terms of, we've seen it in the Marvel Universe, Captain America, we've seen it in the DC Universe with Wonder Woman, but I just love it for some. It just always works for me. I think World War II is just such a massive global conflict that has so much you can do with it, but also B, I think it speaks to the comics themselves. Like that was kind of the heart of when comics are really starting to take off. So, I mean, there's just so much around that mid 1900s time frame. But I don't know, for some reason, like there's so many plots that are like played out maybe, or you've just seen done, but for some reason, like whatever, like I loved Wonder Woman, the original movie, when they were going back and fighting. Like I loved seeing these superheroes in the World War II setting, and the same with Captain America: First Avenger. Like I love that setting. So the fact that you're going to take that setting and put in a vampire, a gorgon, a werewolf, a zombie, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be some wild looking animation for sure.
Yeah, I expect, I don't know shit about Creature Commandos, obviously. It's supposed to be like a 7-episode animated series, like you said, obviously written by James Gunn. He's writing it right now. So this is going to be like a full-on James Gunn project. I have a prediction that this is going to be like The Boys or like Invincible on that level of animated gore, you know, and swearing. And, you know, it's one of those things where he can just do whatever he wants. Like he said, animation, you can take a swing and it doesn't cost him as much as live action if, you know, it flops, which it's not going to do as well as a Batman movie by any means, but it's where he can take a swing. And I kind of expect it to be like an Invincible type show. That's my prediction, but
yeah,
that's all I have.
Listen, I would love that. I think that's a direction James Gunn definitely wants to go in terms of like getting maybe a little graphic and a little brutality, even with his live action stuff. So I think animation is just the perfect medium to do such a thing in. It's also important to note that every episode has been written and the show is already in production. So I don't know where this falls in. Yeah, every episode is written and the show is already in production. So I don't know. Superman Legacy or whatever that Superman movie was called is coming out in mid 2025. I don't know where this falls in terms of the timeline. I'm assuming. Go for it.
This and Waller are coming out pre-Superman 2025 Superman Legacy. So this will be out sooner. He said that, but it's not like the true start to the DCU. You know, I'm sure it's just like a project he was probably working on it already, and he just wanted to keep it. Honestly,
okay.
He's the CEO. He can be selfish like that. You know,
he could do literally whatever the fuck he wants.
Exactly.
So cool. That's I guess more exciting news to look for. Another show with a familiar face is Waller. Sorry, I'm trying to read what I wrote. I kind of outlined just like stupid bullet points that I don't even know like which ones to talk about. But James Gunn is gassing the shit up of this one as well, just like he did with The Flash, saying it's just the greatest show ever. I don't believe that for a second. I just think that's just like him just kind of praising the writers and everyone working on it. This kind of will be a season 2 of Peacemaker because we do have confirmation that Team Peacemaker will appear alongside Viola Davis and will kind of serve as a continuation to that show. So again, just like Creature Commandos, and you know, Cam just explained it beautifully. I don't know entirely where this falls in the timeline, but I'm assuming this is going to be one of the more upcoming projects that maybe we see within 2 years, especially since Peacemaker is already basically a year out. I have it written right here. Both Creature Commandos and Waller are expected to debut before Superman Legacy.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, it's been in production for a while with Viola Davis, and I don't think we'll see like necessarily John Cena when he says like Team Peacemaker. I think we'll see his wife. I forget her name in the movies, and then the fucking beard guy, and then whoever played Amanda Waller's daughter. I don't know any of the actors apparently. All I know is John Cena from that show, But I think it'll just be a continuation. I can't remember Peacemaker entirely, like perfectly off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it ended with like her daughter outing the Task Force X and basically outing Amanda Waller, and I'm sure it's just going to be repercussions from that. Viola Davis, you know, like she's good in this role. I think the Suicide Squad is a hell of a lot better than the original Suicide Squad, but Viola Davis is still good. She's an amazing actress. She's gonna do a great job no matter what. I think I think this will be good. It might not be great, but I think it'll be good. Just with her.
I think you put that perfectly because I totally agree with what you just said. Is Viola Davis is one of the greatest actresses working today.
Yeah,
I think she's good in this role though. I don't think I think she's one of the greatest actresses working today. I wasn't writing home about her performance, and even the new Suicide Squad movie.
That's right.
Amazing actress, that's awesome to retain and keep. I'm excited to see her. Basically, where I was going with this is I'm excited to see her in Waller, where we're going to see much more of her than we ever had, and she's going to be a lot more fleshed out. She's not just going to be a quick video message for the most part, just kind of giving out.
She's always on some sort of pad or laptop or screen or something.
So she has so much range. So I'm excited to actually see her get to flex that range. What I'm saying. Yeah. One thing to talk about the TV shows as a whole. It's interesting that in his announcement video, he just kept saying like, "This is coming to HBO Max because all the TV shows are," but HBO Max is gone starting the summer. This summer it becomes Discovery Plus. So nothing will ever come out for this on HBO Max because by the time they even release something in the DC universe, it'll be Discovery Plus. So I think that's kind of interesting. Like, I feel like the executives at Discovery probably like emailed him after this and be like, "Why the hell did you use HBO Max in the name? Like, you couldn't have thrown us a bone." But I just thought that was interesting because HBO Max is like not going to be a thing soon. But that's where all these shows will be.
They were just combining their.
Yeah, but it's called Discovery Plus Summer 2023.
Oh, is that what it's going to call?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
There's too
Beside
many.
Beside the point.
Too much to keep up with.
Yeah.
So moving on, unless you guys have anything more to say about Waller, but let's move on to Lanterns. I think this is one of the more interesting decisions by James Gunn, making Green Lantern a television show as opposed to a feature-length film, especially just Green Lantern's. You know, he's not on the Superman Batman level, but he's probably tier 2 in terms of DC characters. James Gunn basically describing this, Peter Safran describing this as a huge HBO quality event that is very much in the vein of a True Detective. And it obviously will focus on the most important member, or at least the most well-known member of the Green Lantern Corps, being Hal Jordan,
and Jon Stewart. It's like a buddy cop.
Yep, true.
Buddy cop.
Sorry about that. And they will investigate a mystery that Peter Safran says plays a really big role in leading us into the main story that we're telling across our film and television, which I assume he means all encompassing in the DCU.
Thanos.
Thanos is coming to the DCU. From the very, and I know James Gunn in like his little video that he published, running through all of this, he kind of ran through a lot of things quickly, but this is the one that he seemed to spend a lot of, I don't want to say more time, but he definitely sounded a lot of very, very passionate about what he's doing with the Green Lantern. It kind of, to me, feels like, I don't know, maybe like a Spider-Man No Way Home or a Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or even an Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, where it's a very condensed story focusing on one character that's going to have a lot of implication into the greater universe of, you know, the MCU and the DCU. Again, I think the most interesting bit of news, or not even bit of news, just quick observation, it's a TV show and not a movie. Tyler, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's two potential avenues this could be going down, and I hope it's one as opposed to the other. I think this could either mean it's a TV show because it wants to be more fleshed out more, and that TV shows aren't afterthoughts. They're just as important as movies. Because what I think Marvel did really well at the beginning of their TV show rollout and when quarantine was starting is WandaVision played a lot of implications of the future of the MCU. Then we had Captain America, the Winter Soldier. What the heck? Falcon and the Winter Soldier, sorry. That was clearly like...
You spoiled it. Spoiled the ending.
That's going forward. Like that has implications. Then even with Loki, huge implications. But I feel like they started to get away from it, which is what lost me and a lot of the more casual MCU fans, where it's like stuff like Miss Marvel, She-Hulk. Does it play a role in the future? Yes, but they're more side characters, more afterthoughts, people that don't merit a movie. Whereas Wanda, like, is someone that's really huge that could get a movie. Loki could have easily gotten a movie. So, like, they were still giving TV shows major characters, whereas that's what I hope they're doing here. I hope it's not an afterthought here that they're putting as a TV show. I hope it's just because there is so much to flesh out. But, yeah, definitely weird that it was such a major character getting a TV show. I just hope, kind of like I've been saying, that is not that is just getting just as much importance. Because at this point, for me with the MCU, I feel like a movie has my intention, TV show, afterthought, don't need to worry about it. And I hope that's not the case with Green Lantern. Because talk about a character that's just been boned in movies. They desperately need a Green Lantern to succeed. So doing TV shows bold.
Dogged in movies.
Green Lantern's one of those that's been like production hell forever. You say it's a tier 2 DC character. I would almost consider it like 1B. Like if you we're calling 1A like Batman and Superman and the Justice League. Like like Green Lantern should be in the Justice League. Maybe he doesn't need to per se, but I do think, God, this character of Hal Jordan and then John Stewart has just been boned for so long. Obviously, we all know the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds. Basically, they don't even talk about that shit anymore.
Yeah. Let me just correct you before diehard DC fans come at you. We know Hal Jordan is in. We know Green Lantern is in the Justice League. We're talking just about. We're talking about live action. I just want to make sure I don't want you to get ripped on.
No, yeah. But it's also, I don't know. Again, I often go back to this show, like the Flash and Arrow shows on the CW. Man, I fucking loved those when I was in like high school. And they, at one point, I don't know if it was like 2012 or 2014 or something, I don't know, they rolled out an entire slate, and basically it was like Jeff Johns, and Kevin Smith was like hosting it, and it was basically what James Gunn just did, and this was their first time trying to roll it out, and they promised like Green Lantern Corps is coming to the DCEU at the time, and it never happened, obviously. And then they have like the small, they took him out of the Justice League, if I'm not mistaken. And then, he's kind of in the Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's one of those characters, like I said, it's like a 1B character that just has never gotten a role. It'd be like almost as if it's kind of like the Fantastic Four almost, but that was more a rights issue. And I guess we got a Fan Four stick. I just forget about that movie every day. But that was more a rights issue than anything. They just haven't been able to figure this out. To the TV point, I would say TV, you don't get as big of a budget, but you have more time to flesh out these characters. And I think it works when you're doing something like 2 characters that you want to really develop both of these characters, and then you'll have some more side characters. But Hal Jordan and John Stewart they're the main ones, and you have more time to flesh them out. You're not going to get as big of a budget, but I don't think it matters for DC. I think you'll get a big enough to make the movie good.
Yeah.
Or show good, sorry.
Yeah, I think you summed that up perfectly, honestly. It's a character that's just been disrespected left and right in live action, and it's a character that most certainly does not deserve to be disrespected left and right in live action, just because of what he means to the DC comics and the graphic novels. And especially just what he means to the Justice League. Like, he's a core member. Like, he's there. So moving on, Tyler, do you have any remarks on Lantern? Perfect. So moving on, we got 2 more TV shows that we want to talk about, and then we will wrap up this real quick because it is 1:15 a.m.
Yeah,
this is just our grind to get content on. Paradise Lost, which will deal with the island of Themyscira, the birthplace of Princess Diana. This will take place before the events of Wonder Woman. James Gunn, Peter Safran, describing it as a Game of Thrones story, saying it's really about the political intrigue behind a society of women. Lastly, we'll kind of talk about these 2 TV shows in clumps. We have Booster Gold, which is basically going to be a full-blown comedy. This is probably going to be the DCU's Guardians of the Galaxy or Ant-Man, where it's definitely going to lean heavily more towards comedy. And this is just me going off of what James Gunn and Peter Safran have said, because I can't even lie to you, never even knew who Booster Gold was until about 45 minutes ago.
He was in Smallville, if I'm not mistaken. I think.
Was he really?
So give me a second. Continue, and then I'll learn.
I mean, now I want to focus on that. I haven't seen Smallville in a very long time, but that's very interesting if he was in that show, because I completely forgetting
there's
that.
There's an episode, season 10, episode 18, Booster.
I gotta watch that. So Paradise Lost is the ladies of Themyscira. Any thoughts on this? I kind of like them taking the more political route, especially in a sea of what looks to be, large scale, classic superhero movies that we're kind of used to. I kind of like the idea of maybe giving me
like drama,
drama, something a little bit more grounded. And I know it's weird saying grounded when you're talking about this fictional land of Themyscira. But yeah, any thoughts on that?
I think, obviously, if you bring up the word Game of Thrones to describe a show, I'm going to have my ears perked up. I'm going to be a little cautious, but because something like that with political intrigue takes so long to unfold. I'm excited for it. Sounds very interesting. Sounds a lot more grounded. A lot of deception, a lot of dialogue, probably a lot of witty, interesting characters that are going to have a lot of depth to them. And then Booster Gold is going to be a full-blown comedy. I think it might be almost like a Deadpool in vein, where it's, you know, it's basically his character's like a loser who is in the future, who is just a nobody in the future, but he has all this future tech, so he goes back in time and he's a winner. It's like if we went back in time to caveman time with an iPad, we'd be freaking God. So I think there's a lot of like comedy that could go there, because at the end of the day, he's going to be just like he's going to be just a complete loser at the end of the day. So I think it's going to be funny. But the only thing I just want to say on this is, I don't want to sit here and be like, I'm so excited the DCU is going to do all this stuff better than MCU, because I think there's real criticisms here and stuff we could potentially see is that I'd say Marvel for the most part is pretty one note. However, we could find with its DC universe that there's a very good reason why Marvel is a little more one note and the tone is a little more similar, that I feel like we could easily see this, like if something, because I'm very optimistic, but I feel like we could see 5 years from now that just this movie, then this show, and everything like this, the tones are just changing so much and so different that it's just so chaotic and so hard to conceptualize in your mind that it's all going to the same place and being cohesive, when we got a full-blown comedy mixed with, you know, like just a terrifying horror movie mixed with an R-rated like languages mixed with like kids shows. I'm just saying that's the only thing I'm cautious with, because I mean, we kind of group these two TV shows together and we're grouping full-blown comedy with Game of Thrones, like just those two alone, like on top of all the stuff we already discussed. We're getting way more versatile tones here than the MCU ever has on all these polar ends of the spectrum. Because like we were saying earlier, like Moon Knight, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, they say they go more horror, but they're still very tame. So that's the only pause I have, is that if we go, like we have so many different tones coming here that hopefully it still works and it's not just completely disjointed and a little fracturing to watch. I don't think that'll be the case, but that's the only thing, just hearing all these announcements being made, that I have a little bit of maybe pause going forward with.
Yeah, it's a good thought. It's not something I, thought of, but you're right. Like I said this with Skinamarink, it was a joke, but like, this, makes me appreciate that they have their Marvel formula, and maybe, that's that they figured that out and that's what works. And, it's hard to combine these universes, like you said, if you're doing so much different, like toned movies and shows. So I'm interested to see that. I didn't even think about that. On the Paradise Island, or that's what it's called, right? Paradise Lost. Sorry.
Paradise Lost.
It makes sense that Wonder Woman 3 and like Patty Jenkins and James Gunn couldn't come to an agreement on where we're going to put Wonder Woman, because like Paradise Lost is supposed to be set before Diana is born, which is like 5,000 years ago. Obviously you can basically go back in time forever with people that live 5,000 years, but so it makes sense that they're like, hey, we just can't do we want to do this kind of show, we just can't do a Wonder Woman movie right now, so it's hard to do two things set in the same exact like realm, kind of in different timelines. I'm sure you can, but it makes sense where they weren't able to come to an agreement a while back. Onto the Booster Gold. I hope it's funny. I that's the big thing with comedies. It's got to be funny. James Gunn's humor works for me. It doesn't work for everyone. I've always found him his movies pretty funny. So I'm not too hesitant on it, but when you go comedy, it's really important to make it funny, so that's just the big thing. And that's probably the hardest. Like it's a lot harder than making something scary, or it's a lot harder than making something like action packed. You don't always know if comedy is going to hit for you, so I think that's probably one of the hardest genres to make something that people like. But that's all I have.
I really like what Tyler said, because we're all obviously like, finally, like James Gunn announced something. We have a timeline, we have upcoming projects, we know what's we finally, it feels like months. It feels like every episode of the ReelTok podcast we have mentioned the names James Gunn and Peter Safran, talking about what could possibly come next, and now we know that, and we're all excited. But I think as Tyler said, we still need to kind of err on the side of caution. Like he said, maybe there's a reason Marvel stuck to this little formula, because it works. So we're going to see the DCU in a couple years start up with Superman Legacy, or like officially start up. We're obviously going to get projects before that. So there's obviously a lot of time, a lot of patience on our hands that we need to take care of. Tyler, give me a quick 15 to 20 seconds. What are you most excited for from everything that's been announced? And you shared your overall thoughts on kind of like what's going on, but final thoughts.
Yeah, I tweeted this earlier today. My most excited thing still, even with all the DCU announcements, is still the Batman Part 2. But if we want to say just for the DC universe itself and not other worlds or Elseworlds or what those are called, I'm going to be honestly waiting hands and feet for these Batman and Superman castings. I just can't wait to see where they go with these. In terms of a project, yeah, Superman's still probably going to be my number one, I'd have to say. But yeah, of all the DC announcements today, my number one is still the Batman Part 2 is what I'm most excited to see.
Cam, what about you?
I think it's the Batman Part 2, and I think that's for the majority of people just with how good. So to go with something other than, a Batman, I think you guys kind of talked me into this Supergirl movie a ton. I'm really excited for that now, if they go that darker tone. But more importantly, I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this in about 7 years when they reboot it again. Can't wait.
Boo.
And I'll end off. Again, it's the Batman Part 2 for me, but if we're going strictly DCU, I think I'm most excited, and we're just going to keep it Batman, and that's the Brave and the Bold. And believe it or not, it's not even because of Batman. It's just because I'm very excited to see how they're going to handle Robin in his first live-action film since 1987. We appreciate everyone who has tuned in. This was a very last-minute episode. We didn't even talk about it 2 days ago on our own podcast because we didn't know when this news was going to drop. So I appreciate you all tuning in if you did on such short notice. Any closing remarks other than that? Oh, our usual, we're on Letterboxd, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon now. We'll get more in depth on the Patreon on next week's episode of the podcast. But, I think we're up to 30 patrons, and we could not be more thankful. We did not expect that much success to come within, the first, 3 days in. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed to our Patreon. We will get more in depth on that on next week's episode 22 of the ReelTok Podcast. But as always, guys, we love you. We appreciate your support. Thank you for tuning in so last minute to ReelQuick, episode 12, I believe. Enjoy your day. If you're watching this on YouTube and you made it to the end, comment what your most anticipated DCU project is. Take care, guys.
Good night.